Sitting in for Jimmy Dore here with our guest, the renowned scholar John Mearsheimer, who writes at mearsheimer.substack.com.
What Trump is saying is that this $500 billion worth of aid that we gave to Ukraine, and many people contest that number, but let's just assume it's correct. This $500 billion worth of aid that we gave Ukraine was really based on loans. Based on grants, not on loans. In other words, we were not demanding payback. But now all of a sudden, we're demanding payback. And we're demanding payback for an enormous amount of money, $500 billion. And in the process, we have wrecked Ukraine and helping Ukraine get back on its feet once this war ends, and I'm choosing my words carefully here, is going to be it's going to require a Herculean effort to bring Ukraine back on its feet. And in that situation, do you really want to demand that they pay $500 billion to us for supporting them during the war? I don't think so. There's something that's morally wrong about this. I just don't like the idea at all of telling the Ukrainians that they have to give us $500 billion worth of revenues from these minerals that may or may not be there. When again, I thought we were just giving them the money. We weren't giving them the money and asking them to pay us back. You said in the very beginning, Aaron, that I, a long time ago, said that we were leading Ukraine down the primrose path. And when I hear stories like this about the mineral resources in Ukraine, it really drives that point home. We played a key role, as you and I have just discussed here, leading Ukraine down this foolish path that it's taken. And the end result is it's gotten wrecked. And again, we have played, I think, the key role in pushing Ukraine down this road. And it just seems to me that to now be asking them to pay for all the assistance we gave them when it's going to do further damage to them is something we shouldn't be doing. There's something morally wrong here.
John, if you have time, we'll do one more segment, if that's
Sure.
all right. Yeah? Okay. Thank you. All right. Sorry about that. We had a little technical hiccup. I'm back now.
Good.
All right. Here we go. Okay. I just have to, let's go to Misha for 1 second. We'll take a very quick break. We'll go to Misha Pollan, and we'll be back with Professor John Mearsheimer.
All right, let's get some super chats right, everybody. Let's see. We have first Humongous Shift says, Daddy Donald gonna fix some shit. Stay positive, peeps. Misha and Aaron Rock, thank you so much, Humongous Shift. Very funny name. Christopher,
Okay.
Thank you for the generous donation. Back to Aaron.
I'm back now. Yeah, we're good. I'm Aaron Maté here with our guest, Professor John Mearsheimer. He writes at mearsheimer.substack.com. And as the world marks the third anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, European leaders traveled to Kyiv in a show of support. And in a meeting with Zelensky, with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen promised that even as Donald Trump appears to be walking away from Ukraine, Europe will not.
Announce that a new 3.5 billion euro payment for Ukraine will arrive already in March. Second, as President Costa just has announced, there will be a special European Council, and I will present at this special European Council a comprehensive plan for defense investment, for scaling up our European arms production and defense capabilities, but also for investment in Ukraine's defense industry, scaling up your arms production, your defense capabilities. So this will be a plan for the European Union and for Ukraine.
So that's Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission, promising to scale up military support for Ukraine. John Mearsheimer, you've been studying this war for a long time. What do you make of Europe's rallying call behind Ukraine, and can it make a difference on the battlefield?
No. Look, the Biden administration, which was in office up until January 20th of this year, that's a month ago, the Biden administration had been in office for 4 years. It was firmly committed to doing everything it could to help Ukraine defeat Russia. And it could not succeed. It failed. We couldn't do it. For the past 2 years, the Russians have prevailed on the battlefield. The tide turned against Ukraine, and we couldn't fix the problem. We, meaning the Americans and the Europeans. We now have a situation where the Americans are going home. They're done with Ukraine. They're not interested in providing any support. So all that's left is the Europeans. Common sense tells you if the Americans and the Europeans together couldn't fix the problem in 2023, 2024, and 2025, how are the Europeans going to fix the problem? Furthermore, if you look inside these European countries and what's happening, Germany is in deep trouble economically. Furthermore, its military is in terrible shape. The British military and the British economy are in terrible shape. The British Army has not been this small since 1714. That's 1714. What are the Europeans going to do here? They don't have the military might. They don't have the economic might. And now the Americans have been taken out of the equation. I just wonder what people are thinking when they talk like her. It just makes no sense at all. What you want to do here, for the Ukrainians' sake, right, is you want to settle this one as quickly as possible. Because as I said before, the longer it goes on, the more Ukrainians who die and the more territory they lose. So I would argue from a strategic point of view and a moral point of view, I want to underline that word moral. From a moral point of view, people who think like you and I, Aaron, are on the right side. And people who want to continue this war are pursuing what is a morally bankrupt strategy. We have to end this war. It makes no sense to continue it because we have no way of winning it.
Well, let me put you a counterpoint from the leader of Denmark. This is Mette Frederiksen, the Prime Minister of Denmark, who just said this: I understand that many people think that a peaceful solution or a ceasefire sounds like a good idea, but we run the risk that peace in Ukraine is actually more dangerous than war that is going on right now. We run the risk that peace in Ukraine is actually more dangerous than the war that is going on now. So according to the Prime Minister of Denmark, Professor Mearsheimer, peace with Russia is more dangerous than war.
I'm guilty, Aaron, of overusing the word delusional, but I can't help myself. This is delusional. What is she talking about? I mean, sometimes these people make the argument that if we settle with Putin in Ukraine and he wins this stunning victory, he gets what he wants, he's then going to take countries in Eastern Europe, he's going to recreate the Russian Empire and so forth and so on. This is nonsensical. As we've been talking here, the interesting question is how much of Ukraine he takes. He's not going to take all of Ukraine. I hope he only takes the 20% that he's now taken, the roughly 20%, the 4 oblasts plus Crimea. I hope for Ukraine's sake he doesn't take Odessa, Kharkiv, and places like that. But he's not going to take the western half of Ukraine. He would be insane because it's filled with ethnic Ukrainians who hate Russians, and he'd have a major insurrection on his hands. So he's going to take at most 40% of Ukraine. Hopefully he'll only take 20%. So what is this argument that if, he gets his way in Ukraine and, takes a big slice of territory in the East, that's a prelude to him, dominating Eastern Europe? It's not going to happen. Furthermore, there's the whole question of capabilities. Have people not noticed that this war has been going on for 3 years, and the Russians have had a devil of a time conquering the eastern 1/5 of Ukraine, right? They've not conquered all the territory in those 4 oblasts that they've annexed. Just very important to emphasize this. The Russian army is not the second coming of the Wehrmacht. This is not Germany overrunning Poland in September 1939. The Russians just don't have that kind of military capability. The idea that they're going to conquer Poland or Romania, this is not going to happen. And they're not even going to conquer all of Ukraine, as I said. So what you want to do is you want to get a peace settlement here. You want to stop all the killing. I think, by the way, Aaron, when people finally find out how many Ukrainians have died and how many have been badly wounded, they're going to be stunned. I think the number is going to be remarkably high. I think the Ukrainians have paid a god-awful price for fighting this war. And that's all the more reason, to shut it down now. And especially when, again, you consider that continuing the war is not going to make it any better from the Ukrainian point of view. They're not going to turn the tide here. They're not going to push the Russians back towards the Russian border. It's not going to happen. If anything, the Russians are going to take more territory. So cut a deal now.
Someone who shoulders a lot of responsibility for the fact that so many people have died and that a deal was not reached is the former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who personally intervened to help block the April 2022 peace negotiations between Russia and Ukraine in Istanbul. And this is Boris Johnson speaking recently. This was right before the U.S. election, so late last year, about the war in Ukraine, which he accurately called a proxy war.
We are, let's face it, we're waging a proxy war. We're waging a proxy war, but we're not giving our proxies the ability to do the job. And for years and years now, we've been allowing them to fight with one hand tied behind their backs, and it has been cruel. It has been cruel, and we need now to give them what they need. So
that's Boris Johnson accurately calling this a proxy war, but rather than advocating shutting it down, as Professor John Mearsheimer has, calling for it to continue and for the NATO to give Ukraine even more weapons than it currently has. John Mearsheimer, we're going to wrap. Any final comments for us?
I would just say that I believe that argument is morally reprehensible. The argument that we're going to use Ukrainians to bleed the Russians white, that we're going to throw Ukrainians into this meat grinder, so that they can do damage to Russia, is crazy. First of all, Russia is not a serious threat to the West. And furthermore, the idea that you're throwing Ukrainians into the meat grinder, you're creating this situation where, hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians are dying for some pointless strategic reason, is really just horrible. I just wonder what people like Boris Johnson are thinking. I only regret that people like Boris Johnson can't put a uniform on and be sent to the Eastern Front in Ukraine and spend a couple of years there fighting these battles. I think that if they did that, they'd have a better view of how to deal with this problem. In fact, I think they'd want to shut it down as quickly as possible.
John Mearsheimer, leading political scientist, international relations scholar at the University of Chicago. He writes at mearsheimer.substack.com. John, thank you so much for joining us with your time and insight.
Thank you for having me on, Aaron. I enjoyed it greatly, even though I find the subject categorically depressing.
All right, over to Misha.
All right, more super chats. Hey, Kurt.
Hey.
Let's check. Well, what do we have? Simulu, global evil, all one word. I like it. Global evil Force wants UR war, so China defeats US. Thank you, Simulu. Simulu comes back again. Only CCP has ambition and potential to defeat US, not R.
Wait,
Thank
Simu Liu, that's not a that's the guy from that Marvel Kung Fu movie.
Is that? I don't know that
That's
movie.
an actor and somebody being stupid.
Simulu.
Yeah.
Man, I don't even get the joke. I feel so left out.
Those weird feet things.
SS, war goes hand in hand with domestication. It is practically unknown amongst non-agricultural, non-domesticated, enslaved, and enslaving peoples. Thank you,
It's called war
SS.
domestication.
War domestication.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's
a great point.
That was a good word there. The reason is because domestication is a form of enslavement, which is product of a traumatized mind. Trauma causes the slavery mentality plus desire to fight.
That's why I said to my girlfriend, because she wants me to rehang these stupid curtains up.
And
I didn't say put them in there.
It may cause
Domestication
trauma.
is the first step. It's the trauma that you cause.
Right. I hope that you don't have to go through that, Kurt. That seems like
Me too.
that could just be terrible for your future
Yeah.
and the future of
domestication.
humanity. Simulu.
Like, I know what to make of it. They're all in on it.
Right. Let's see. It looks like Aaron's almost ready, but I will finish we'll finish Simulu's. Where was I? Let's see. I make sure I'm on the same one.
We're back working in Wuhan now, are we not? So it's like, did the CCP do it? Why do we still work with them? Why do we
Good
make
point.
our stuff there?
You know what, Simulu? I will find that and reread it when we come back to Aaron.
Thanks, Misha. I'm Aaron Matte here with Kurt Metzger.
Yeah.
And as Donald Trump continues to talk about making peace with Russia and walking away from the Ukraine proxy war, MSNBC's Rachel Maddow predicted that Americans were not going to take it.
Yeah.
One other thing to watch. If we really are now abandoning the free world and lining up instead with the world's dictatorships, and Trump is unwilling to even explain why, just watch. The American people are going to have some feelings about that too. Just watch.
Oh my God. I do have some feelings. Does anybody know what day here in Austin I can throw out a big box of COVID masks, Ukraine flags, and BLM signs? Is that a special trash pickup?
Well, the uprising that Maddow predicted hasn't materialized yet. People are not taking to the streets to demand that more of their tax money goes to arming neo-Nazi militias inside Ukraine and sacrificing Ukrainian lives just to bleed Russia.
Maybe if it was Israel, I could see taking some real action. Shooting two guys who I think are Palestinian but turn out to be Israeli, but they blame Arabs with me.
Well, listen, luckily to explain why the pro-proxy war revolt hasn't happened yet, let's hear from CNN's Brian Stelter.
Implicitly, it's pretty obvious what's happening. Some of this, I fear, is about illiteracy on the part of the voters, not knowing, for example, about the spending that's going to Ukraine that's actually funding American technology, right? Funding American manufacturing plants. And by the time you do learn those facts, it's too late.
But I do think, look, not.
Let's hear that one more time. Listen to Brian Stelter explain why more Americans are not up in arms, that their tax dollars won't be continuing to fuel the Ukraine proxy war. Let's hear again from Brian Stelter.
Pretty explicit, at least it's pretty obvious what's happening. Some of this, I fear, is about illiteracy on the part of the voters, not knowing, for example, about the spending that's going to Ukraine that's actually funding American technology, right? Funding American manufacturing plants. And by the time you do learn those facts, it's too late.
But I do think, look, not.
Weapons manufacturers, that's what he's talking about.
Yeah,
you don't
they say
realize it's cool because they're making money on it.
Yeah, and the voters are just illiterate. Wait, they don't
You said not to
understand.
do my own research.
But
I stopped doing research.
But by the time they find out, he says it's too late. So,
Whoa.
only I'd known.
Are you sure? It feels like there's plenty of time with this war dragging on and on. It feels like it should have been like out of time a long time ago, but it just kept going somehow.
Well, you're right, Kurt, because our corporate and political overlords have not been shy about telling us constantly for 3 years that, yes, our money for Ukraine is actually going to weapons contractors. Here, for example, is Stelter's colleague, Aaron Burnett of CNN.
It's worthwhile with all of this gaining, some steam in public perception to be clear on some facts. First and foremost, the vast majority of this money is going to American companies and jobs, right? Because those are the people who are making the Abrams tanks, the ammo, and everything else. And we take Lockheed Martin, which makes the HIMARS that have been core to Ukraine's counteroffensive. The company announced it's going to increase its workforce in Camden, Arkansas by 20% just because of this new demand. That money is going to America.
Well,
there we
can
go.
they get some illegal aliens to work there?
So Brian Stelter must not be aware that his own colleagues have been trying to, spread the word that their tax dollars are going to weapons manufacturers. Here's one more example. This is from just late last year, Morning Joe. Retired Admiral James Stavridis.
Donald Trump about the money we could spend on Ukraine. We're talking $40 billion a year, which is about 5% of the U.S. defense budget. Our defense budget, $800 billion, $40 billion, about 5%. For that amount of money, we are breaking the phalanx of Russia's military. Those are the best dollars we have ever spent in defense. And point two, all that money, that $40 billion a year, that's not a check we're handing Zelensky. All that money is paid to U.S. defense contractors, making our defense industrial base stronger. Russia gets weaker. To Joe's point, final thought, the Russians today are spending 35% of their GDP on defense. That is not a prescription for long-term growth.
Yeah, Willie, this is a generational impact on Russia. And yes, it's helped U.S. businesses.
Yes, it is, in one word, for President Trump, it's leverage. This is terrific leverage. You put a small amount of money in, and you get massive effect. This is a good deal for the United States.
So speaking of the president-elect.
It's a great deal. It's a great deal. These people hate welfare. They hate social programs. They love welfare, though, for the military-industrial complex.
What does he mean that's not just going to check to Zelensky? Didn't Zelensky say they're missing half the money we sent? And which means more than that, by the way.
Yeah, he did say that. He said he's received half the money that's been allocated. That's right.
Who is this guy, by the way?
James Stavridis. He's a retired admiral. Not admirable. He's not admirable.
He works for the Matt Orphalords.
Let's hear another one. This is Senator Mitch McConnell.
On another issue, we're looking forward to seeing President Zelensky on Thursday.
We play him again.
On another issue, we're looking forward to seeing President Zelensky on Thursday. I think it's always good to remind everyone that a good portion of the money allocated to Ukraine is being spent in this country to rebuild our industrial base.
What? Is he just not saying the weapon part? Because our industrial base.
Yeah, the industrial base that deals with making missiles that maim people. Yeah,
Don't we still need China for that? I don't understand why this is so important, but we send it all to China.
And by the way, he can thank Mitch McConnell. He can thank Bernie Sanders, the squad, the entire Congressional Progressive Caucus for voting alongside him to rebuild the military-industrial base. So great job. Lindsey Graham, let's hear him say it as well.
Ukraine is still standing. This war is about money. People don't talk much about it. But you know the richest country in all of Europe for rare earth minerals is Ukraine. $2 to $7 trillion worth of minerals that are rare earth minerals, very relevant to the 21st century. Ukraine's ready to do a deal with us, not the Russians. So it's in our interest to make sure that Russia doesn't take over the place. It's the breadbasket of really the developing world. 50% of all the food going to Africa comes out of Ukraine. We can make money and have an economic relationship with Ukraine that'd be very beneficial to us with peace. So Donald Trump's going to do a deal to get our money back, to enrich ourselves with rare earth minerals, a good deal for Ukraine and us. and he's going to bring peace. And Biden's been a disaster when it comes to containing bad guys.
You wait. You said it was the best money we ever spent on minerals.
That's right. The best money we've ever spent, and we're going to get it back through minerals.
a big old pile of minerals. Minerals, y'all.
So I don't know what Brian Stelter is complaining about. The word has gotten out. Just for some reason, I guess
It's too late now.
It's too late now. And those illiterate Americans, according to Brian Stelter, just don't get how good.
Everything's a Humpty Dumpty story with this guy.
All right, let's send it over to Misha.